In the last section of this podcast, I was explaining and talking about how spelling patterns can be used to anticipate whether or not a vowel in an unknown word makes a short sound utilizing a CVC pattern. In this section of the podcast, we're going to talk about how we can utilize syllables and generalizations around those syllables in order to figure out the same kind of thing. When we see a vowel, does it make a short sound or not? So let's start with this idea of a syllable. One of my favorite memories of my first grade teacher, Mrs. Falk, was when she was teaching us about syllables in reading. We were clapping, and that seems to be a pretty widespread thing to do. Everyone seems to have this idea of, oh, you clap for a syllable, but without an idea why. And one of the things that I loved about her was that when I asked her, why are we clapping? She was able to tell me why that was happening. We're clapping because we are hearing a vowel sound. And that's exactly what a syllable is. A syllable is the smallest unit of speech that has one vowel phoneme. So we're clapping because we're breaking it up. We're breaking a word up into its vowel units, into its vowel sound. So it's a unit, can be within a word, if it's a multi-syllabic word, or it could just be a one-syllable word. But the important thing is that that syllable has one vowel sound. So let's pull this apart. What do I mean by all of this? Let's start with the word mat. If we're thinking about the word mat, it's one syllable. We'd clap once. And the reason is that there is one vowel phoneme in mat. It's that ah sound like we hear at the beginning of apple. Now, if we take a deviation from this and have mattress, we have two vowel phonemes. The ah in the mat and the eh in the tress part. Because there's two vowel phonemes, mattress is actually made out of two syllables. So mat, one vowel phoneme, mattress, two vowel phonemes. One syllable versus two syllables. Now, when we're thinking about syllables, there's different kinds of syllables. All of them have to have one vowel sound. However, for instance, mat and tress both have a consonant phoneme at the end, which makes them a closed syllable. A closed syllable ends with a consonant phoneme. To further illustrate this, let's think about the word window. When we're thinking about window, we have two vowel sounds. We've got the I in win and the O in do, window. So there's two vowel sounds, and remember that W in this instance is acting as a vowel. So we have win and do. If we're thinking pattern-wise, win is a CVC pattern, do is a CVV pattern. Because win ends in a consonant, that's a closed syllable. Do ends in an open-ended vowel sound. So that's not a closed syllable. It only is a closed syllable when it ends in a consonant sound. There's also a thing called an accented syllable. And this is often in a multisyllabic word where one of the syllables receives greater stress than the other syllables do. And when you're thinking about a one-syllable word like pan, one-syllable words are always accented. So we only really have to be thinking about an accented versus unaccented syllable when we're dealing with words that have more than one syllable in them or is multisyllabic. To illustrate this, let's look at pencil. Pencil has two vowels in it, or two vowel phonemes in it. So we have to break it up into its two different syllables. When we say pencil, there's one of the syllables that gets more emphasis than the other. And so pencil there's a certain stress to that first syllable. So that E is really a short E. Pen, pencil. Yet if you listen carefully, you listen to that I, the sound that I makes, it's actually more of an sound. Pencil. That's how you know which syllable is accented and which one is unaccented. An accented syllable, number one, has more force behind it. Normally that vowel sound is more distinguished. And then in the unaccented syllable, the vowel sound gets replaced with that sound. And we'll talk more about that in a later podcast. So in this particular example, pencil, pen is the syllable that is accented. Sul is the unaccented syllable. This is normally shown in dictionaries by the use of an apostrophe. So when we see that apostrophe, we know that pen is the accented, sil is not. So what does all this mean for the generalizations that we can make? So a single vowel in a closed accented syllable usually represents the short sound of the vowel. So we've taken this idea of a closed syllable, a syllable that ends in a consonant sound, with an accented syllable, a syllable where we don't hear that sound. That's going to represent the short sound of the vowel. Now, there's one more thing I want to go over really quickly, and we're going to use the word fence as a demonstration. When we're thinking about the word fence, this is a one-syllable word. We hear one vowel phoneme sound, and the spelling pattern that we're seeing is a vowel consonant consonant E pattern. And so when we're seeing that E sound is a short vowel sound. So even though there's an E at the end, it's separated by two consonants. And because of that, it usually represents a short sound. So the generalization here is when a word or syllable has two vowels, one of those vowels is being a final E, and the two vowels are separated by two consonants, a vowel, consonant, consonant, E. The first vowel often represents its short sound, and the final E is silent. So in this podcast, we've talked a lot about syllables and how syllables can impact the ways that vowels sound, particularly in relationship to the short sounds. You have a couple of questions, and I'll see you in the next section of the podcast.